fast forward a couple years later, like life was great again. We were good. Still kind of, I had questions about like, okay, I'm under 30 and I've had 2 totally unrelated cancers. Like but I just kind of, and there were questions of like, well, did the pregnancy cause the leukemia? And I don't think it caused it, but maybe it had. I mean, when you're pregnant, your whole immune system is going to. So maybe I was fighting it, and maybe they caught it earlier because it was, who knows, like all questions that.
A lot of what ifs.
Right. Yeah. And I really try not to go down those rabbit holes. I really just try to accept the fact that I don't know and go from there. Because you can worry about it all you want, but you're never going to get the answers. You're not going to change it. So, like worrying about the past is like sucking the future out of tomorrow. So things are good. And then all of a sudden we did one leg workout one day and my knee really started to hurt, my knee and leg. And it was, I just thought I just went too hard and it was, okay, let's rest it. Let's take a week off. Let's see how it's going. And I was getting PRP injections. It's the platelet-rich plasma, and they basically extract your blood. They spin it up in a centrifuge and make this like superpower stuff that they re-inject into the energy. And I had a shoulder injury before that worked really well.
So you thought, let's do this on my knee too. Yeah,
right. And I was seeing the chiropractor. They checked out all my mobility, and they said, well, it doesn't look like it's ACL, MCL, like nothing like that. It's not a strain. They thought it was maybe patellar tendonitis, which made sense because that's from I played volleyball. I did track and field, a lot of
active life.
Right. So that was about a 6-week span.
Okay.
And you do 3 injections of the PRP, and after the second one, I said to the guy, I'm like, "Are you sure this isn't a crazy tumor?" And he looks at me and he goes, well, those are very rare. And I said, well, okay, I'm very, very rare. Like I've had 2.
I've heard this before. Yes.
Are you sure? And he says, well, let's just see how this one goes. And then next one, if it's not better, we'll go ahead and order some scans. So and of course, with hindsight's 2020, like I'm kicking myself, like, why didn't I just call my oncologist and be like, hey, we should probably get a scan? But again, another thing that I just.
Yeah. You're like, there's no way I'm going to have to do this for a 3rd time.
Right. So they, and in the meantime, I had an appointment set with an orthopedic surgeon, a doctor's office, just to have them truly check. Because where I was being treated was a chiropractor, which they're great. They do wonderful things. But, not when it came to that, you need something more specific. So I had already had the MRI ordered. And I walked into their office and the guy was like, he took one look at my leg and you could see his eyes were just popping out of his head. Like, and I've talked to him since and he's like, I thought we were going to have your leg amputated.
Wow.
So.
Was it swollen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was very just weak. Like I had a lot of muscle atrophy because, and I thought it was just because it was hurting. So I wasn't working out as much. So, and it really sped up in the last like couple of weeks leading up to finding out what really was going on. So I had the MRI done that weekend after I had talked to the orthopedic guy, and he called me Monday, like as soon as they had the results, and he said, hey, this needs a biopsy. Do you have an oncologist or do you have any connections? And I said, yeah, I've got an oncologist in my pocket. Yeah. So I called up Dr. Newman and I said, they know. It's like when they hear from someone out of the ordinary that they're like, is everything okay? I'm like, no, not really. I'm just seeing a scan. So he calls me that night and he says, I don't trust anyone in Naples to biopsy this thing. Do you want to go to Miami or Tampa? Miami or Tampa?
Yep.
I was like, no thanks on Miami. Been there, done that. Like, let's try a new city for cancer treatment. Yeah. And the next day he had me into Moffitt, and Moffitt is in Tampa, Florida. It's a cancer treatment center. It's an amazing place. If you have cancer and you live in Florida, like that's where you want to be. Okay. And my oncologist down here, like really kind of called in a favor, and one of the top surgeons there called me that same night and was like, hey, I know this is a lot, but can I see you tomorrow? And I said, absolutely. Yeah. So with that day, I had a biopsy, had another MRI with contrast, and he called me the next day and said, okay, this is what we're dealing with. It's osteosarcoma, bone cancer. It's very rare. 1% of malignant tumors are, and they knew my history as well. Yeah. So at this point, he said, we don't need to worry about this right now, but we're going to get some genetic testing done to find out if there's a component that's causing all of this, because there has to be. Like, how could
this
we
is
have
not normal for someone,
right? Especially for someone that, like, you know, I don't do red dye, you know, any of the things that you would think.
Yeah,
like,
you live a healthy lifestyle.
I followed all of the things. Yes, nothing that would lead to cancer. So that was, I'm trying to think.
You're a burn member.
Yes. So, okay. So the burn community in Burn Naples knew that I had been having knee problems the whole time, because obviously I was not running. I was modifying. I was not the burn member that they were used to seeing. And knew that I was like trying to figure out what was going on. And I was still coming to camp. Like, I came to camp the next day, and Sam, I walked in and she's like, "Hey, how was your appointment?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have cancer." And you could just see it. And I felt really bad because she was training that camp. And I'm like, "Oh, I probably should have waited till after. Like, didn't want to like rock her world." But, you know, I did it. And then I, as I found out more and more about like, because at this point, after being through 2 other cancers, one with major surgery, one with major chemo, I knew the questions to ask. I'm like, okay, what's my chemo map? Like, how many rounds? How much in-time hospital? Like, am I going to have to be isolated again? Because I think the isolation with leukemia really hurt my mental state. And so
you want to be very prepared this time.
Absolutely. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I cannot fall into one of those depressions again. I've got to stay positive. I have to keep moving. I have to do this and make sure, and knowing like, okay, this is the go mode before. And even when it's done, I got to make sure like everything is good. And everyone else was very like cognizant and aware of that as well. But when I went, I pretty much started chemo that next week. I mean, it was a very quick, because with the way that they treat osteosarcoma, usually you do like a third of your chemo leading up to surgery, because it helps shrink the tumor and get stuff under control. I actually felt a lot less pain at that point, because it was
starting to shrink.
Right. It was attacking the cells. Then they do surgery, and then you finish out the other 2/3 of your chemo.
Okay.
So this chemo, I remember talking to the oncologist about it. He said, "I know you've been through chemo before, but chemo for leukemia is like a marathon. Chemo for osteosarcoma is like wind sprints.
Okay.
Like
hard and fast."
And so it was kind of the same thing. Like it would be a week of chemo, week off, week of chemo, week off. And that was pretty much, and I was traveling up to Tampa for all of this because I wanted to be treated there.
Yeah.
And which it's like a 2.5 hour drive from here. So it could be a lot worse, but still, and plus my kid is 5 by this time. So we're still in the mode of like, okay, she's starting kindergarten. We gotta, all the life things, right?
Yeah.
And my principal was very understanding and flexible, and I'm a school counselor, so I was able to work remotely a lot.
Okay. Do like some zooming in with kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with osteosarcoma, when you're not in treatment, you can pretty much live your life normally. It's not, you don't keep the immunocompensation. It's just the chemo that knocks it out and it comes back. So I was able to go to work and go kind of back and forth, and that kind of kept me sane, I think. And I knew that was an important piece that I needed to keep my mind going. And I would, in the hospital, be able to do things and just stay, keep distracted.
Tell us what you did in the hospital, because you shared this earlier with us, and I think it's incredible.
And I started talking about this, and I kind of got sidetracked. But when I was diagnosed, the burn community was just incredible. People that I had never even talked to before, didn't even know, like maybe had seen them once or twice, like personally reaching out to me. They did my sister started a GoFundMe, and once they posted it on the burn Facebook page, it was like just the monetary donations, the time, the thought, just incredible.
That's what the burn community does, right?
Like I knew I had a lot of friends and a lot of people cared, but wow, it was just like I couldn't even believe it. So when going back to when I found out for sure this is osteosarcoma, one of my first thoughts was not like, I'm going to die or I'm going to get my leg amputated. Literally, it was, I'm still hitting 250 this year. And I had hit
Keep Moving Club.
And I had hit it the 2 years prior.
Okay.
And I was on track for it. And I'm like, so I'm contemplating, you know, I'm calculating in my mind, like, okay, well, it's summertime if I double up on cardio and then, you know, I can do so I'm like planning, you know, so that really was such an important piece because it kept me sane.
Yeah.
And while I was in the hospital, I would bring my mini bands and I would bring like little things and find out ways. Obviously, I was not doing like box jumps and burpees hooked up to an IV, but or if it was a cardio day, I would go and walk the halls 15 times, or I would do little water bottle. I had and the nurse, you know, the nurses were so funny, like, oh, you're making us feel bad. Like you have cancer and you're working out more than I do. And like,
hopefully you inspired them a little bit.
I did. And sometimes they would come and do it with me.
That's awesome.
And when I would be back in camp, obviously having to modify, and this was pre-surgery, still had to modify some. But people would come and modify with me. Like, you know, they would go and you know, I couldn't do the full squat, so I'd do all sit and someone would come and, hey, how's it going? And,
that's incredible.
So
tell us, did you hit Camp 250? So
I had surgery in August 31st, and this was 2022. And I thought, I didn't realize the surgery was going to be as major as it was. I thought, okay, no problem. It's a knee replacement. I'll be back in a month. I had talked to a lot of people that had knee replacements before, or even like ACL reconstruction. Yeah. Holly had torn her ACL at the time, and she was like,
I remember that.
Yeah. She said, my, you know, in PT, I see people with the knee replacements and they're like, you know, doing better than me. And so my mindset is like, okay, this is not going to be that bad. Yeah. Well, it wasn't just a knee replacement. It was major
leg
surgery.
Reconstruction, right?
Yes. They removed the tumor, which was in my femur. It was about 21 centimeters. So about 7 inches of my femur was totally removed. There's a prosthetic piece in there now. There's a rod that goes in the rest of my femur, total knee replacement, and then a rod that goes in my tibia. Wow. So really made, like, I was not back to the gym and normal in 30 days.
Yeah.
But I still had that goal in my mind, like, and I was like, well, okay, I'm not doing the full workout, but I'm moving. So this is what the Keep Moving Club, that's what's important about it. So I got to December, and December I was better. I was a little bit more mobile. I was able to do a little bit more, not having to modify as much. And I calculated, and I'm like, oh my gosh, December 31st is going to be 250. So I kept it pretty low key. Like, I didn't tell a lot of people, but they knew, and a couple people knew, and I walked in, it was a Saturday. I walked into the 7 a.m. and I'm looking around and I'm like, why are all these people here? Like, what? All the trainers were there. There were people at camp that I've worked out with before that don't normally work out at that time. And I'm thinking, like, all right, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then they announced it. Sam was training again. And, you know, to announce my 250, she got up there and she choked up and she's like, I just can't even. But I wouldn't have made it without everyone there supporting me every step of the way. Like, it was just, and they had a gift for me and like all this nice stuff. Yeah. And then if you fast forward to the following year of hitting 250, I had gone through some other stuff. It was not as easy as it could have been, but I did do all my workouts in camp, which I was really excited about. Same thing happened. I walk in and I'm like, feels like a 6:30 camp, and I'm like, there's no way they're going to do this again. Like, I already had cancer. Like, they're not doing. But again, like, just I had already felt so loved. I couldn't feel like I could be any more loved, and there it was again. Yeah, just.
Well, you're worthy of that love. I hope you know that. You know, like people wouldn't do that just for anybody. So your story is inspiring, and you've been through more than anyone should have to go through. And I think that, I hope you're proud of yourself. You know, I hope that you take time often to just really be proud of what you've done, because that could take somebody down, you know, and you've been challenged a lot with life. And I pray that you don't continue to be challenged. Although I would bet that anything that's brought your way, you're going to get through, because you've gone through so much.